Hello, everyone out there at the Six Dorans Show. I am your host, Jacob Sminted Sanders, and as usual, I am joined by Jamie Selceus Christensen and Tanner Blitzerama Brelje.
What up, dude?
Hello.
Sorry for the delay on that start. Apparently, Tanner must have used his left hand to point because I have his entire right side of his body on the camera and his left side covered.
Oh,
So,
gotcha.
so I had no idea he pointed at the screen until he was like,
Go!
Gotcha.
"Go!" It's fine. Everything's fine. Anyway, so we got a lot to talk about tonight. We got some EU action going on, and NA playoffs are going to be going on. I think this is actually kind of nice for like at least our material because we don't have to cover EU and NA playoffs and have like this 2 to 2.5 hour episode. We can do it differently at a time, so that's pretty great. So, as the case of this, though, we're actually going to be covering a little more NA than EU tonight. In makeup for that, though, when NA is doing their gauntlet or whatever, we'll be talking about more about EU because EU will be in playoffs. And while NA gauntlet is important because that decides the number 3 seed, I think EU playoffs is more important than the number 3 seed for Worlds. Not putting any like disinterest on the number 3 seed for Worlds, but I think the battle for number 1 and number 2 of EU is much better than the battle for number 3 in NA. So if you want to fight me on that, you're more than welcome to at JC Sanders TBS, but I probably won't listen to you anyway. I mean, you can make your argument. Maybe I'll think about it, but I'll probably just respond with a sarcastic gif or something like that.
Brutal honesty.
I mean, people who have the ability to change my mind, they do, but like, it's really hard to argue number 3 in NA greater than number 1 or number 2 in EU. Like, that's a tough
we
one.
all did just watch Rift Rivals not very long ago.
Yeah, we did. Anyway, so let's head over to EU while we're still talking about it. So it was I think a weekend where like everything that we talked about last week has shown up, right? Where we said G2 is the number 1, right? Fnatic and Splice are right there together for the top 3. Schalke, being that 4th, 5th, or 6th place team, right? And then Vitality we thought was improving, and they have improved to 7-7 now from an 0-5 start. They're 7-2 in their last 9 games. That's really good. Origin is still slipping through the cracks at 6-8. Rogue has shown some modest improvement, like we like, at 5-9. And SK and Excel are tied at 4-10. Excel's gotten some wins lately, and Misfits has dropped all the way to Doom Kingdom at 4-10 as well. If I had to argue, I actually would say it's possible Misfits is the worst. I don't really know per se, but I think out of any of these bottom 3 teams, you could argue who's the worst. But in my opinion, the most exciting team to watch is Excel, only because I think they create the most competitive games even when they lose.
Lately, that's for sure.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, they've been... again, being the resident XL fan, it's been heart-wrenching to see some of their games where, they have it and all they got to do is just bring it home. But, they just end up failing every so often, which is a bummer. But, yeah, they're definitely the most exciting. I will say, though, Misfits have been really, really entertaining to watch as of late. And maybe that's just strictly because it's a bunch of newer guys who we've never seen before actually doing well in a league that they've never played before. So that's always impressive. But, yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like anybody's truly, like, absolutely garbage in the LEC, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, so with Misfits, the fact that they're on a 3-game loss streak kind of shows what I think everybody expected. Even when a team comes in and has a hot start, like, it can just be because they're new and nobody knows anything about them, and so you don't know how to prepare for them. You don't have like any film, right? It's just like other sports. You don't have any film on them. And now that they've been playing consistently for a few weeks now, they did go on a little bit of a losing streak here. They are still exciting to watch, and I would definitely say better than the previous roster. Like, they're still looking competitive in the games that they're losing for the most part, and so it's nice to see that. Because of that, I would say that I still have SK at the bottom of my list. I think that they had a little bit of they had a couple of good games this weekend, even though they did lose one of them. They still looked better, but I would still have to put them at the bottom just because they have been the same roster the whole year, and the fact that they're 4-10, I guess, speaks a lot to me. And the fact that Misfits, even though they've been losing their, like I said, they're on a 3-game lose streak. Even though they've lost those 3 games, it's still brand new players, and I guess you give them a little bit more benefit of the doubt. Like, even if they keep the games close against these professional teams, at least that might be how I'm looking at it. Sanders, you're muted.
Yeah, you're correct. I pressed the button. I was looking at. I even looked at it. I was like, that's muted, but I'm gonna keep talking. What a night. We're off to a great start, guys. I love our show. It's so flawed and perfect. It's so flawed and perfect. I love it. Like some general statements about like how EU is. The loss that G2 took to Vitality. I think there's 2 ways to look at it. There's the way that like I Will Dominate and LS looked at it, and usually if LS has an opinion about something, I already hate it. It's not very often I agree with. It's not often I agree with LS. I think more often than not, he's just a moron who thinks he's the all-knowing person who's right, when really he's not. He has like a very good like knowledge of the game, but in turn, like anything he says that could be ridiculous, he won't admit to, and I hate that. So he's a good caster, though. I'll give him that. Like he's a really good caster. I just think his analysis is sometimes very off. So, like one of the buffs that was like super important for a champion, he called useless, and then they were like, Mordekaiser. It was something about Mordekaiser, like the rework. He said it was the most useless rework. It wouldn't be played in pro play, and here it is fucking banned by Riot because it was that broken and they had to fix it. So enough on LS though. LS and I Will Dominate said that they thought GG just picking what a fan wanted them to pick loses integrity of the game and fucks with standings, because theoretically Team Vitality should be 6-8 and tied with Origin, right? Like that's what it should be, and Rogue should be 1 game behind 5th and 6th. That's really what this should be. But because G2 decided to meme it a bit, standings are skewed, and when Rogue is like at a tiebreaker with Origin or whatever, they could be like really mad at G2 because they're like, well, it could have been a 3-way tie instead. Maybe we would have won one of those 2 games, but no, G2 had to fuck around or whatever, right? Like I think there's some legitimate like claims to that, but the other side of this for me is, well, if you need to rely on G2 not memeing around, that's your problem, frankly, and
Right.
You need to win more games, A. And B, I think Team Vitality actually did a good job against G2 considering the circumstances, that both Perks and Caps was 2-0 at one point, and Perks was 3-1. That usually spells defeat for the enemy team, regardless of who's being played at top lane, which, they Wonder played Garen, right? He'd never played Garen. They said even in the player pro view, he was like sitting in the bush reading Garen's abilities, like hovering over them, because clearly he had no idea what the hell the champion did.
It's really not that hard.
No, it's not, but like when a player's sitting there reading abilities, that tells you he has no idea what the fuck he's doing.
Right.
So I understand like that aspect of it, but like at the same time, I'm like, okay, if 2 of your star players are that far ahead, you shouldn't be losing the game. I don't care who your top laner could be, like Nami top, right? Like you should be winning the game. I understand that like if Perks and Caps fail to do their job having a lead, which they did, and they shouldn't, but they did. Fix that maybe, or cause a good team fight, which Garen is not that. But that aside, I want to give some credit to Vitality for beating the team and coming back against a losing mid and a losing bot. But I won't put too much credit into it because, well, I can only wonder what would have happened if Wonder would have played a serious top laner. So I think there's some given. Yeah, it was competitive integrity. On the other side, Vitality did win the game.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I guess this is my take. I definitely agree with the second half of what you said, because I think that the argument of G2 having fun and making some meme picks is not the problem of that, like a team potentially making or missing the playoffs should have. It's I should have beat this one team that I should have beaten, or I should have taken a game from somebody that I didn't. And like, you should, I guess for me, always look inward, never look outward when you're talking about like what could have been. And so if Origin, ends up being salty that they are a game behind Team Vitality because of the G2 game, then, I guess more power to them, but I don't agree. Get over it and just play better. Like
Hashtag get good.
Yeah, I super agree with that too. Like it just seems so ridiculous to kind of insinuate that your entire season got screwed up by one troll pick from G2. Like,
on top of that though too, like, so we've seen this in other sports, right? Where a team, comes out and kind of throws away a game, right? To actually impact seeding. But the thing is that G2 has given themselves the ability to do that without hurting themselves. So and these are all speculations because there's nothing that's come out saying that, G2 did this to like do anything with the standings and whatnot. I think it genuinely was just a troll pick because of the sign that was in the audience. They've done it before. They won with it. They decided to do it again. And this team's probably a little bored, to be honest, at this point in time against the competition that they're playing against. And this is the type of team that I don't think it hurts them. Like if another team were to do this troll pick, like, and they lose, like I could see it actually like affecting them, right? But G2, I have a feeling that come playoffs, we're going to see the same G2 that we've been seeing when they're at their strongest internationally. I don't think that this one game is going to impact their performance at all. But back to what I was saying, like G2 has afforded themselves to make some decisions on potential playoff teams that aren't just themselves. And if they decide to mess around because they think Vitality would be a good playoff team because they don't have any worries about Vitality beating them, then why not give them an extra win to help them in their race to the playoffs? Like, we saw Origin, what they did in playoffs in the best of series. Granted, they don't look like Origin, but if you could kick that team from last split out, and also doesn't that hurt their points, right? Like that means they don't get points. If you can kick them out by helping Vitality to get in there and not them, like if they keep falling like they're doing, Rogue or Excel or Misfits still all are in position to, take over Origin. And so, like I said, it's all speculation because I honestly don't believe that G2 did this with any plan for this to like affect the standings.
Oh no, you listen to the mic check and like literally like the fans had Garen, and then literally I think it was Caps looked at Wonder, he's like lock it in, and then Perks and Mickey X were like lock it in. Like they were totally memeing, like they did not give a single
right. So
but
to I guess just go back at that argument that LS and Dominate are making, like, no, like, first off, bullshit in general. Like, the teams that need to do better just need to do better, and so quit getting on somebody's case because they're sitting at the top of the standings and meme around a little bit. But on top of that, if you want to like have a serious conversation about it, I think that the point I'm making of, having the ability to actually affect the standings and stuff is legitimate. Like it's something that I think we might see more of, in League, but it's something that we already see in traditional sports.
I think it's a legitimate claim. I mean, like, I don't agree with the claim, but I think there's some legitimacy to the claim because essentially, if we go back to the very beginning of the season, right? where everyone is 0-0, we can go to that G2 Vitality game and say Vitality is 1-0. Like they get a free win. They have a 1-win handicap. That's kind of what that is, right? So I think, yeah, I mean,
but it's not at the beginning of the season. Like
no,
G2
but like
has playoffs locked in. They're not worried about shit.
no, but upon reflection, for I'm not even worried about G2 here. I'm talking about like for every other team involved. Like to them, that is a handicap win to Vitality. It only helped them. There was no it only helped them. It did no it did nothing for Vitality's growth, right? For them to beat G2 because it wasn't quote unquote legitimate. And like I said, it ruins, standings. I think there's a legitimate claim to it, and I can play devil's advocate and back it up, even though I completely disagree with it. I think, I'm on the get good side. If you're gonna complain about it, get good. Like that's the side I'm on, right? But I do, if I was like a coach of that team or a player of that team, I would be kind of upset to say I should be tied with Vitality, not one game behind them. If it was G2 versus Vitality, maxed out both teams, G2 wins it 100%, right? Like I don't even give Vitality a shot to win that game. So I see it from like a player's perspective, which is what I Will Dominate is, a former, pro player. And I do kind of see it from Ellis's perspective because he's an analyst and he's supposed to look at it from a competitive integrity standpoint. He even complained about it when I think it was like some Korean team. It was a 10th place team versus I think a 3rd place team. The 3rd place team totally like memed it out or whatever, and they ended up losing and they like dropped to 4th or 5th place because of it. And he was like, if the 3rd place team would have just taken it seriously, they'd still be in 3rd place. And he complained about that too. But so I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. If that makes any sense, Tanner, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess for me, you guys pretty much got it, and I completely agree with the sentiment that, they should have just, won their other games or something like that, and one game from G2 isn't, that big of a deal. I also wish some other figureheads in the community were the ones saying it, because when it comes out of the mouth of somebody like LS or I Will Dominate, even though, again, they are experienced people with probably some good opinions on it, it's really hard sometimes to take what they have to say seriously. And I know LS is pretty smart, but I mean, man, like just having watched I Will Dominate as of recent, just kind of devolve again into a bit of a it's toxic. He's absolutely toxic, and he's a shit poster too.
She's a shit poster on Twitch. Yeah, I know.
Right. So it's harder for me to take that as seriously as like say somebody like Papa Smithy comes out tomorrow and says, "Hey, I think this was this was a mistake, and this is why." I'd be like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe there's some value to that," but it's you don't see that. But I completely agree that one Garen game from G2, the team that technically could pick any champions they want and try to play with them and normally succeed, to point at this one game where they picked a champion and it didn't work, even if it was for a meme reason, is just ridiculous. So I don't know.
I'm of the opinion that God could come out and say these comments and it wouldn't change my mind.
And that's fair. That's fair. Again, if Papa Smithy did say this shit, I still wouldn't agree. I still wouldn't agree with him. It would be easier for me to digest his point, but yeah, I still wouldn't agree.
So the other side to this, though, is like if G2 won, they'd be praised for being godsends and innovating.
Yeah, here's the other thing. It's like, in Team Liquid this past week played a glacial comp in their final game against TSM and won. And nobody's sitting there just like, Team Liquid picked a meme glacial comp, and they were hurting the integrity. It's like, well, because they won, so nobody gave a shit. But if they had lost to TSM, people would totally be saying that. So it's like
all it did was just increase the flame of TSM. Holy shit!
Oh yeah.
But Sanders looks like he might have frozen
just a little bit.
So, geez. But yeah, no, like. I guess while he's getting reconnected, I'm gonna just speak my final piece on this. Like, I guess I can kind of see the point that people would be making about it hurting the integrity of the game, but ultimately, like, League of Legends, even in its competitive form, is still fun. And also on top of that, there are 160 champions for a reason, and we're starting to like with the meta as it's been since last Worlds, we have seen more champions being played consistently than we have in the 5 years previous.
The only reason I'll disagree with you on that is the jungle. All I ever see is Jarvan Sejuani, and I'm really sick of it.
Now,
As
I
a
know
jungler,
that
I'm
Garen has
very sick of seeing
never
the same
been
two.
a staple of it, and also the matchup that they picked it into was absolutely horrendous. Like, I am a Garen player, although I am a bronze player, so I'm nowhere near the level of the people that are playing on the weekends, right? But playing into Karma was a death sentence from the beginning.
Well, yeah, 'cause she could just stay safe the entire time, and Garen can't do shit about it.
Right. However, like, there are people that I watch on Twitch that, again, are not pro, but they are like challenger level Garen only players. Trust me when I say that you can play Garen if you understand Garen, like,
And the
matchups, which obviously
Wonder does
did
not.
not.
Yeah, I think that was the thing that was
You
most
can't actually
surprising.
get away with it.
Yeah, like that was the most surprising part. Is like it was almost like Wonder had never actually touched Garen in his career.
Probably not since he did the tutorial.
Yeah, and I mean that's honestly kind of shocking to me. Like he hasn't had a couple games with the bros where he's just dicking around and he decided to play Garen. Like he legitimately almost had. It seemed like he just had never played Garen ever. And that was kind of shocking.
I think it's because, no offense to like Selceus, I love Garen too. I think he's a fun champion to play, but that's like the noob champion to play, you know, like the one that, like, if you're new to the game, you play it to understand the game, and then you go to more complex things like Fiora, or I don't know who else has a sword.
You don't need to apologize to me, man. I understand that it's a noob champion, and once you get to like platinum, probably it gets hard to play Garen. Like,
because people understand how to beat him. Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's not that difficult. Like,
the
champion is to
he's
play.
very
It's
linear.
not that
He's a
difficult
run-at-you champion.
Right. It's not that difficult to counter him either. So,
yeah.
But anyway, did you want to move past that? Anything else you want to talk about with EU?
Yeah. So one last thing with EU. I for the G2 thing, because people are like, oh no, G2 lost to Vitality. They fucking pub stomp Fnatic. That pub stomp was literally my confidence in, like, oh yeah, G2's number one. They're winning finals. Like, all good. Like, I'm not even sure how excited I am for EU finals, because I have a feeling it's gonna be like MSI finals. It's just gonna be a fucking 3-0. I feel G2 is gonna be like, yeah, it's time to actually, like, you know, take off the weights off our legs and actually go at you full speed. Like, Tanner, did you ever watch Naruto?
No, I didn't, but I understand the reference.
Do you know the Rock Lee taking off the weights meme?
Yeah, I've seen that.
That's exactly what G2 would be doing. I should actually make that video. It should say G2 at finals takes off the 30-pound weights. Now, for reference, Celsius, for you, there's a character in Naruto where he's like the fastest character in the show. And then suddenly, during like a fighting match, he like asks his master, he's like, "Can I take off the weights?" And he's like, "Go ahead." And everyone's like, "What weights?" And you see these things around his legs are actually 30-pound weights on each leg. And so when they drop to the floor and they like explode on the ground, everyone's like, "He's already the fastest person, and he has 60 pounds of weight on him. How fast is he actually?" And then he's like lightning speed. So, yeah, that would be like I'm
glad that you explained that, because I had no idea.
Yeah, that would be like what G2's doing, though, right? They take off the leg weights and say, "All right, let's go. We outclass everyone." So, anyway, the one thing I want besides G2 winning Fnatic is Splice lost to Excel. I wanted to like address this because they went on and beat Rogue right after. I don't think this is a bad thing for Splice at all. This is like one of those unlucky games, and also the matchup's pretty heavily favored for Excel if they can execute on their early game, because Splice is a late game team and Excel's a very early game aggressive team. So I think the matchup just played into Excel's favor, and then they managed to close it out, something they haven't been able to do very well. So if anybody's worried about Splice, I'm not. I think it was just unlucky day, unlucky game. You move on and learn from it.
It'll take more than one upset for me to jump off of the Splice train right now. Like, they've been consistently good. Everyone slips a little bit here and there. Them losing to Excel does not worry me at all.
Agreed.
But I had one game that I wanted to touch on because we've been really down on Origin lately, and I think rightfully so. But the game against Schalke, Origin was actually like, I don't remember how far ahead Schalke was, but Origin started clawing their way back. And it ended up being a teleport play that Schalke won off of. But if they would not have teleported, Origin was winning the fight that was taking place when they teleported, and probably
this is the game where Upset teleported to end the game, right?
Yeah.
This feels bad for Origin because they had the game in hand.
Yeah, so if they wouldn't have teleported, Origin was winning the fight, and at the game time that they were at, I think that the death timers would have been long enough that Origin would have been able to go. Yeah, would have been able to go down and win the game, without any problem. But it was a good call by Schalke, to make the teleport happen, and it even took the casters off guard because they were too busy looking at the fight and calling the fight, and then all of a sudden as the fight's winding down, OG's gotten a couple of kills and everything, they're like, oh, look at the base, and like you said, Upset's just standing there hitting the Nexus down 5 more times before the game ends. So Origin won their game against Misfits, and then should have won their game against Schalke, barring the teleport play. So I don't think that necessarily puts that much more faith in them for any of us, but I did want to call it out because of how much they've struggled the previous weeks and how much we've kind of been shitting on them. I wanted to, give them a little bit of credit.
Can I still shit on them and say they lost a game they should have won?
Yes. you sure can.
But at least they look competitive in it. That's for sure.
At least they look competitive in their losses. Not something I can say for TSM, and we'll get there.
Oh, jeez.
I have a lot of...
I feel like you just went and just turned it.
Oh, no. I didn't put a knife in your intern.
No, it was already there. You're just turning it.
No. I put a jagged saw in there, and I'm rubbing it back and forth.
That's a visual.
And that's what's gonna happen when I talk about TSM, because holy shit. Anyway, let's get with our EU picks so we can actually get to NA. There's so much to talk about for NA. So the first one for this week of EU, it should be week 7 if I am correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, or week 8 because they have 2 weeks left. Yeah. Schalke versus Misfits. Is anyone bold enough to pick Misfits? I think Schalke is a solid 4th place team.
Yeah, no. Misfits is on the downslide, and so I can't pick the upside here.
Yeah, if they looked a little bit better this past week, I think Misfits would have been my lock for sure. But I mean, Schalke had a decent week. Misfits seems to be like you said, people are starting to figure them out since they've been in the league for a couple weeks now. So I'll definitely take Schalke.
I also want to give a shout out to Abadage. He's going from worst mid laner to 7th best mid laner, which isn't much, but it's been enough for this team to do well because they actually have a decent roster on them. So shout out to Abadage for improving. Not that he watches this show or whatever, but I think it's nice that he's gone from unwatchable to at least watchable and making some plays for his team. If he continues to grow into the EU mid laner meme and becomes a really good mid laner, Schalke could be a top 4 team perennially, which would be super cool. Moving on to...
It's been the picks that he's been playing too. He's been playing Assassin type of champions.
Yeah, he's been he's been a little more diverse in his picks from the meta. So the next one is Vitality versus SK. What do you got, Tanner?
Man, I think even with the win that they were given, I'm still liking Vitality's look these past couple of weeks. I think they're a much better team than SK. And so I don't have any reason to pick against them, but I think even if they were up against some better competition, like they are later this week, I would still consider them.
Yeah, it's pretty easy after this last week and what I just said about how I feel about SK. Vitality is my pick here.
I agree. Vitality is the pick. Sweeping for Vitality. We're all picking G2 versus Rogue, right? We're not letting silly memes, defer our judgment.
I hope they play Garen again and that they get a win this time.
Yeah, I'll pick G2 as well.
Fun fact: G2 actually has to win. I think it's 2 more games as of right now to secure a bye. They don't even have the bye secured yet, so which is kind of funny that they meme when they don't have the bye secured. But that's how confident they are. I think this week they'll go in, say if we go 2-0, we get the bye. We're good. We're done. We get first seed. So we got G2. I think we're all picking Fnatic versus Excel, right? Or are we a little
Unfortunately. Yes, I will pick Fnatic.
Okay.
I really want to, just for the hell of it, but no,
I wouldn't be surprised if Excel won this game, actually, because Fnatic looks shaky at times, but Fnatic's just a solid squad. And for the last one, Splice, I'm picking Splice for Origin. They're a top 3 team, right? And Origin, I won't be surprised if they don't make playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if Rogue or probably just Rogue because they're closest in the standings for it. But I wouldn't even. I guess maybe a 4-win team could do it. I doubt it. Rogue is the most likely one. I wouldn't be surprised if Rogue took Origin's place here, right? I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
that's just how badly Origin's doing.
So Splice, and again, I actually this is another one where I'm just letting some bias sink in from the previous split success that they had. I want to see Origin of last split, and I keep wanting to, but it's just not the smart pick. So
I don't think they exist. I think that's the issue for me if they don't exist.
Right. Well, I have Origin here, and I have TSM and NA that I'm hoping I keep seeing their form from last split.
I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't either.
So next one is Schalke versus Rogue. I'm assuming we're all taking Schalke here.
Yeah, I would agree. Rogue just again looks like they're teetering just a little bit, and Schalke just looks a little bit better than them. It's not a huge difference, but I think it's definitely Schalke.
I'm gonna pick Rogue. This is my upset pick. I looked at the other matchups and I feel like they're all pretty straightforward.
I feel like there's an upset matchup I like here. Anyway, so the next one is SK versus Splice. I think I do want to make a comment on SK. I think SK for me is just, they're tied for last place at 4-10, right? This was a team I expected to make some strides, and they haven't. And I think this is just what this team is until they make some roster changes or look for new talent. So I'm going to take the better team in Splice with, Kobe and Humanoid and Xerxes and all that to beat up on SK, right? This is what top teams do.
Yep. You said it.
Yeah, completely agree.
Cool. All right, so this is my upset pick, the next one. I'm picking XL to beat Origin. The reason for this is because when Origin has won their games, they've done it through methodical play, and they've not been methodical at all this split. And I feel like they've just been lucky to get their 6 wins when they do get them. There's a couple that Origin have earned, but overall, I think it's been really messy games. And I have this feeling just like how XL beat Splice, if XL gets ahead and they at least execute, which has been a problem, but if they execute on it, which I don't think is too hard to do against Origin, Origin loses. I don't see them coming out and knocking XL off their feet in the early game. This is where XL accelerates. I don't want to make that pun, but there it is. So yeah, I'm legitimately picking XL, not just as an upset pick, but I really think XL can beat Origin.
Tanner?
Yeah, I'm actually thinking the same thing. I'm gonna pick XL as well. I do like a lot of what they've been doing, even though sometimes it does feel like they can't bring it to fruition. But I think Origin is definitely a team that's had its struggles this year, and I feel like XL is on a better up than OG is on, and I'll definitely take them.
The one thing I would like to say is I think Mickey's mid lane play has vastly improved this XL team because ever since he showed up, this XL team looks better, and I think he can beat Nuke Dust. So yeah.
See, I think that the mid lane is where I struggle because I think Nuke Duck has been playing, at least this last weekend. I thought he played better. The matchups that I'm looking at are Cold. It does not look like Cold from last split, and so Cage roll against Cold is where I think Excel would probably have the biggest advantage, in my opinion. I don't know. This one's actually really hard. I looked at this and I thought OG. While you were talking though, Sanders, I was like, you know, Excel has looked pretty good. And they did just beat Splice, right? Sorry. Yeah, they just
XL
beat
Splice
Splice.
this week.
So, I guess I'm gonna just go with my gut. When I read the matchup, I went OG, and so I'll just stick with that. But
That's fair.
I do think that this is kind of a coin flip, and I agree with a lot of what you guys said.
Cool. All right, and we're all gonna pick G2 versus Misfits. It's the first place team versus the 10th place team. Let's not go there. The next one is Fnatic versus Vitality. Do we have an upset here? I'm gonna go with Tanner first.
Despite me liking Vitality's recent streak of play, I think it's possible for Vitality to win here. But honestly, I'm still gonna give it to Fnatic. I think they've just looked more consistent than Vitality over this stretch of the season, and it feels like even though they've kind of been forcing the Karma bot lane with Reckless, it definitely does seem like they're starting to get used to it, and it's starting to look even better. So now that they've got that under their belt, I think Fnatic is obviously not anywhere near like the level of G2 in flexibility, but I've been liking their look, so we'll go Fnatic.
So I'm also going Fnatic. Nemesis has looked spectacular. Really, the last like at least 2 weeks, but probably more. Really, the entire split. And even though Jizuke, I feel like has stepped up his game, I think that Nemesis is better. I think Bwipo has looked better as well. Here recently, like especially when he's on Aatrox, and I'll probably talk about Aatrox a lot more when we get to NA, because I think that champion's fucking broken right now. Just from what I see in pro play. But yeah, I guess I wouldn't be overly surprised if Vitality pulls out a win here, but Fnatic's my choice.
All right, I see it. This is hard for me because I actually think that Vitality has the potential to win here. But maybe that's downplaying Fnatic more than I should be. And I think Fnatic's actually looked pretty good. Granted, they got pub stomped by G2, but who doesn't get pub stomped by G2?
The early game, Fnatic was ahead, but then it turned around.
Yeah, I think Fnatic just like has a better sense of what to go on with the game, the flexibility in bot lane, which Tanner was talking about. And I think Bwipo has gone from like this inconsistent guy to a guy who just like won't lose his lane. And that's fine. That's kind of all you need, right? You just need your top lane not lose it. Like kind of like Impact of old, I would say. And that's what Bwipo has become, which is an improvement from inconsistent Bwipo. So I like the Bwipo that's currently there. I like the way Brox is jungling. And you know, Nemesis has been doing great in the mid lane. So this is an overall just a solid squad. And while I think Jizuke's been on a bit of a tear lately with Vitality, and Kabashard's been doing really well, Mowgli is still Mowgli. I'm taking Brox over Mowgli, and like I'm not trusting Vitality's bot lane like we usually talk about, especially against Fnatic's bot lane. So yeah, I'm taking Fnatic. All right. That wraps it up for EU. So let's go over to NA, where there's a ton to talk about. So let's structure this first. I want to talk about the teams that didn't make playoffs and don't have a chance to make Worlds whatsoever. That is Golden Guardians, 100 Thieves, and Echo Fox. Echo Fox is no longer going to be part of NA in general. They are being sold officially to the Sentinels, which is also the LA Guardians in Overwatch, which it was also previously run by Phoenix One. So the organization that ran Phoenix One will be back. I don't know if that's what they'll go under. We don't know what their title is going to be, but that's what the organization used to run was Phoenix One. Whether they take that name back, I don't know. As for Golden Guardians, I think Golden Guardians' run was noble. They did go into the tiebreakers as the lead favorite for the tiebreakers because they were up ahead. They were actually 5th place going into this. Some upsets happened that we'll talk about when we talk about playoff teams. A little bit of it's unlucky, but I think a lot of this represents what Golden Guardians was just a very middling team that had some hot streaks and some cold streaks, and their cold streak came when tiebreakers came, and last week in tiebreakers came around. I wouldn't call it choking. I would call it a cold streak because that's what this team has consistently done. Hot, cold, hot, cold. What do you guys think about Guardians?
I think that they were full of players that were like middle of the road. Like the only player that I really put at like top half of his position is Hanser, and I know that that's a little bit probably crazy to hear with Froggen, but I've never been overly sold on Froggen, especially since the game moved away from a 20-minute laning phase. When that was the meta, he was king. Like, he was a god at farming, and still is. But unfortunately, that's not what the game is anymore, and he still had some success playing those champions that he was good at back in the day when laning was like a very, very, very big deal. In fact, he still shows that he has a high enough proficiency at those champions that he can compete at a pretty high level. But if I had to, rank or pick my mid laners, Froggen would not be one of my top choices just because he does not fit into the game as it currently sits as well as he did in the past. And I think people are just hoping that, he's going to be the Froggen of past with that success. And maybe it's also the talent around him, because I'm definitely not sold on contracts. They just they obviously weren't even impressed enough with their bot lane because about 3 weeks ago they made a change, and then they traded away their starting bot or 80 carry to Cloud9,
who won a tiebreaker game against CLG, which is pretty noble to talk about. Definitely did win the tiebreaker game against CLG for the number 2 seed. It's kind of funny how that works. That like if you tailor a game plan to a player, they're gonna perform well.
Right. Well, I mean, you have to do that, but you also have to have the talent around the rest of the map. And with how I perceive the talent on Golden Guardians, none of them being really the top half of their position, you could plan around one person all you want, but you're still probably not going to win a bunch of games. And this team now has had this experiment going for 2 years, right? That's when they franchised. And this is the closest that they've been. No, like they actually made it into playoffs, right?
They made it to playoffs last spring, yeah.
But an 8-10 record typically is not anything to scoff at. Like 8 wins is it's usually okay. Last place playoffs, but and I mean, I guess it was this time too, but they needed to do a little bit more, and they weren't able to do that. And I just don't think they have the talent, and it's with the current roster to get any higher than like last playoff spot at best.
The way I view this roster is, I want them to actually bring the same roster back in spring with a different jungler. I'm okay with Froggen. I think Froggen's always been a solid player. He's never been a carry, in my opinion. He's never been a hyper carry. He's like Reckless, actually. In a lot of ways, he's like Reckless. Stall the game, let him farm up, and let him carry in the late game.
Which is why they did not coexist well on Alliance.
I mean, they did dominate for a while on Alliance, but he's a player that demands resources, right?
Well, but I don't think Reckless was on those teams when Alliance was actually good.
No, they were on the same teams together. They were. I remember that was the team that got. It was the team that got kaboomed. and we were.
I'll believe you, because I remember when Reckless left Fnatic, it went really poorly for him.
It did.
And then he went back to Fnatic.
But when he left for Alliance as well, like you
was it
were
Alliance
saying,
or Elements?
it was Alliance. Elements did exist too, but it was Alliance, AAA. Froggen and Reckless did not coexist, which was one of the big problems. But like I would say, Froggen is a lot of the ways like Reckless. Like let him farm through, and then he'll carry the late game, right? I think Hotter's fine, like you were saying. I really, in the last 3 leagues, have really liked FBI and Huhi. I think they have their flaws, but I think they were a vast improvement over definitely and Ole. And I really liked what they had to show. Like all this hype for FBI coming from Oceania to NA was huge, right? And he finally got to play. And while I don't think he was like the storm that everybody expected to be, because he was the number 1 AD carry in Oceania and pub stomped everyone, and even in like at MSI and in wildcards. MSI, it was at MSI. In the wildcard ones, FBI was popping off, even though his team wasn't doing very well. I really liked FBI, and I think he's competed pretty well against some NA bot laners here. So I really want to see the combination of FBI and who he stay. I think Froggen is fine because, like I said, solid player. I think Hotzer is fine. I think you need a more aggressive jungler. Dardoch, I think would be great for this team. It's still a crime that Dardoch is not on a starting LCS team. Oh my god. So I think actually an upgrade to Dardoch would be perfect for this team. And Dardoch has played with Froggen before, so there'd be some synergy there. And he's played with Huhi as well. So I honestly think this team is like...
That might be part of the problem, though. Like, those guys have played with him back when he was not the current Dark
but he's much better now. He's a good guy.
They might not care about that.
But anyways, I think this team is a good jungler away from doing well. Not that like Contracts doesn't like perform poorly. I just think I think he's vastly overrated, and he's like an 8th place jungler to me. So it is what it is. I think they're a jungler away from being a competitive team. Speaking of competitive teams, let's move on to 100 Thieves.
Hey, real quick,
unless
just,
Tanner, you have
just
something
to be
else.
sure. So yeah, just the last thing that I wanted to say about Golden Guardians is I feel like a lot of what we've been talking about Golden Guardians makes me almost think of them as, if they do come back as the same team, maybe with a slight upgrade, I see them almost as like the possibility of becoming the Splice of LCS, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like not the Splice of this year, because the Splice of this year seems like they're keeping rolling. They're doing excellent this year. But, like, the Splice of earlier years have been kind of just, like, this consistently average, maybe above average team.
Fourth or fifth.
It was always, yeah. I feel like they could definitely be that kind of team. And that's just because, I'm glad they didn't make playoffs, because I was a little bit bored with their kind of play style. They're just good, and their games where they won were just good, but they weren't really super exciting. But yeah, that's kind of where I see them. The only other thing is, sorry to rain on your parade, Sanders. Starting AD carry for Alliance's historic loss to Kaboom was Tabs, not Reckless.
I thought Tabs was on Elements.
He might have been at some point, but the lineup for that was Wicked, Shook,
right.
Frog, and Tabs.
Well, remember that Elements turned into Alliance, so
that's true.
It's the same team.
Selceus was correct then. I am wrong and a dumbass. Fine.
All right. Anyway, yeah.
I could have sworn Tabs is on Elements though, because when he said Elements, I'm like, oh yeah, Tabs is on Elements. There's no way, but I was wrong. Thank you, Tanner, for correcting that.
Yeah, no problem.
Anyways, so let's move on to 100 Thieves, which is a competitive team. I am very sad this team is not in playoffs. Admittingly, they don't deserve to be. They had 2 chances to do it, and they didn't. They couldn't get it done. They went out pretty nobly, I think, because they did what they had to do. They had to beat Guardians and they had to beat CLG. It was not an easy ask. It was a manageable ask, but it was not an easy ask, and they pulled it off. I think this team started 0-5, right? And then when they put in their actual roster, they went 8-5. I think if this team started off in week 1, they make playoffs. That's all a bunch of what ifs and whatnot. But I kind of hope 100 Thieves doesn't change this roster. I want them to keep this exact one actually going into next year. I want to see what this team can do with a full offseason of practice together and a full split. I think Amazing has been a great leadership voice. I think Amazing has actually done pretty well in his comeback as a career, because I remember he took a year off because he thought he was a shit player. and then he thought, I think I can come back, and he's done pretty good. Bang finally looked like Bang. Aftermoon pretty much returned to form. Ryu has been miraculous in his comeback as well, and Fake God's been pretty nice. And I think if a rookie like Fake God improves, like, sky's the limit for 100 Thieves. So I want to see what they look like one more split with this team, and I hope they don't take it apart. There's a case to be made that they do, because this is an organization that's top tier in esports, and they want the best of the best. I wouldn't be surprised if they like tore this roster apart for improvements. But I think you kind of like what Nate Shot tweeted out. He said it was a disappointing. He said it was a disappointing end, but he was really happy with the run that they started. And if that's true, I kind of hope Nate Shot says I was really happy with how things were going. We just unfortunately had an 0-5 rut with the team that we are not playing right now. So I want to try that in spring. I really hope it. I like this 100 Thieves team. What do you guys think? Do you think they should make any changes, or do you think they should give this one a full split go?
I mean, I completely echo what you just said. I would much rather like to see 100 Thieves stay together as the team that they are, instead of disbanding anything. And I was going to agree and say that, Nade Shot did sound very positive about the team's outlook, on Twitter and after the season. And Nade Shot's always been a pretty, nice guy on Twitter and all this stuff. So hopefully, that's not just him putting on a front. But I don't know. The early games obviously were a detriment, and I think if this team had the full length of the season, no doubt they would be in playoffs. So
I think they'd have like 10 wins, to be honest.
For sure, right. And I feel like them playing together again can only strengthen, because again, they've made so many roster moves over the past couple of years with this team, and nothing ever seemed to work, and everything just looked like a horrid waste of potential for all these guys. And now that you finally got something, I feel like it would be really, really stupid to try to put a fork in that at all and change anything. So I'm more than happy with them keeping it together, even if they're not rivaling Team Liquid in both salary and skill level. Like, they should probably just be try to push what they have and push it up into third and fourth, because honestly they definitely could.
So I agree with what you said as well. I would definitely like to see this team come back. The question for the organization, though, is, I guess, the question they need to ask themselves is, do we want to be the best team in NA? And if the answer to that question is yes, this is not the roster that I think fulfills that goal. Team Liquid right now is by far the best team, and I don't think that even next split that we would think 100 Thieves in its current form would beat Team Liquid. Unfortunately, this is the problem that TSM has had in the past, and they think, let's go try out this what should be upgrade, and it then turns out to be absolutely awful. And that's what 100 Thieves has just gone through themselves. So it's a hard question to answer, because this roster definitely is a playoff roster next split. The way that they played.
I think there's room for Fake God as well, right? Like, if Fake God turns into an elite top laner, this team is totally different, right? So
I just don't know if I believe that he's going to be an elite top laner.
I'm not saying he is, but I think the difference between some teams that like deviate away, like when 100 Thieves deviated away from Meteos, is we know what Meteos is, right? They didn't like that, they moved on. Cody-san was toxic, they didn't want that, they moved on, right? Whereas like everyone in 100 Thieves, you know what they are, except for Fake God, right? Like, that's a player where, like, if you get rid of him, that's like okay, I can see why you got rid of him, but it's also very unknown if he could have thrived after a full off season and going into a full split and whatnot. Because I think Fake God's done pretty well. So it's one of those things where you have to wonder, can a player improve to suddenly become amazing? Because Licorice looked good with Cloud9, and then he looked amazing, right? And I can't help but wonder if Fake God can do the same thing, going from looking good to amazing. Now, Licorice has maintained that standard and has been the best. No one's outdone Licorice, and I don't expect Fake God to do that. But I think you have to give him a shot to do it.
I don't think Licorice has looked as good this split, I guess, while you're talking about him. But he also was injured, so I chalk some of it up to that. Like,
Yeah,
he actually sat out because of
injuries. But like,
injury and
but
stuff.
like,
So.
do you see what I'm saying with Fake God? Like, give him the shot to do so, and if he does it, cool. And if he doesn't, then you go move on. That's why I'm thinking.
Sure.
This
That's where I'm at too. Like that's why I started by saying I would like to see this roster staying the same as it is right now, as well. It's just with these teams and with the amount of money that they're spending, and they're also raking in from investors. Is it good enough to, in my opinion, in this current form, I agree in about the 10 wins, right? But that still puts you outside of the top 3 teams at best in this this split standings.
This is something we've talked about
And this
too.
is and so that's like a 4th, 5th place team. So yeah, you're in playoffs. Is that good enough for you? And then yeah, you can maybe make it out of the first round in with that standing, but are you going to beat one of the top 2 teams? And that's where the answer to me is almost a definitive no. And if that's not good enough for you, like not even making finals, then do you have to do something with, like I said, the amount of money that people are putting into this? Do you have to do something? And they might say yes. So
I think the answer to your top 2 question is if it's Team Liquid, no. If it's Cloud9 or CLG, I think you have no idea if we're talking about next split. This split, totally agree, right?
right.
But
Well, I'm kind of projecting from what I know this split, and I guess I don't think that they would beat Cloud9.
I think they could.
In a
I
best in a
favor
best of
Cloud9.
5, I
I
don't think
favor
that they
Cloud9. I
would.
definitely favor Cloud9 there, but I think they could. But I favor Cloud9 at the moment. But that's so far ahead into the future.
I'd put it like 80-20, and that's not good enough for me.
And I would tell this to every single LCS owner, every single LCS coach, and every single LCS hopeful. I want to tell you, as long as your team doesn't have double lift, you're not taking the first place. He has had 7 champion or 5, 6, some ridiculous number in a row, from CLG to TSM.
That's fair, but I'm just talking about making finals, and I don't think that they would even be making finals.
But you were going off like the best team like in the league type of thing. I don't think anyone is having the best league unless you have double lift on your team, and that's my opinion.
Well, yeah, unless you throw double lift on that one split that he took off, and you put him on FlyQuest so that they can just make it back in. I don't think
he actually went to Team Liquid and he saves Team Liquid from.
Oh yeah, I don't think they would have been winning the championship that year though.
No, but he did save Team Liquid from 10th place to 7th place. He took a horrible team.
He is a great player. I'm just saying that he's also surrounded by a bunch of other great players. So I think that if you throw him on the worst team in the league right now, they're not winning playoffs just because double lift's on it.
No, for sure. But he's always been like the factor in I think every final ever. It's always been double lifted this, double lifted that. Like something happened for double lifted dude where it was like, wow. I think this last finals you could argue Jensen was a huge savior at the Elder Dragon fight versus TSM. I think you can argue that one, but for the most part, almost everything that comes to mind for CLG or TSM or Team Liquid, most of the time it was double lift made this crazy, stupid ass 3v1 play that shouldn't have happened, and he made it. So, yeah. Speaking of, we were talking earlier about 100 Thieves making changes. Speaking of making changes, let's talk about the players that they dumped because they made playoffs, and let's start with Optic. Meteos was tossed aside, and he is a core reason Optic is as good as they are. What do we think of this Optic team? If you ask me on a short-sighted analysis, I'll let you guys go first. I think they're the worst playoff team here. Honestly, I think their run was awesome at the beginning, but ever since they've gone 4-10. Yikes. And they haven't looked as good when they were doing split push with Crown, and that's not what they've been doing lately. I think they ran away from their winning strategy, And that's a problem, and Meteos has just been good enough to save them from their problems. Like, this is a solid squad, but, like, they've gone away from their win conditions. And I don't know if, like, scrims went poorly to where, like, split pushing with Crown was bad and people figured it out. But I'm not optimistic for Optic here at all.
Talent-wise, I think that they have talent, but take Dokla off of Aatrox. And honestly,
Yeah.
And honestly, you see what this team has looked like even just recently when you do that. Like, I agree with you. I think that they're the worst team in the playoffs. Probably just behind TSM, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I don't see them having any chance to beat CLG coming into this playoff run. It's honorable that they made it this far, and I think this season, if anything, just proves to bolster the legacy of Meteos, regardless of how well they do, because, like you said, he pretty much just carried this team on his back and helped them get into the playoffs. So all the respect in the world to him, but yeah, I mean, like, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. Putting Aatrox away for Dokla is, gonna be team, like, that's like taking a huge crutch away from them, honestly. And I doubt CLG will A, let him have it, or B, just, completely ban out. So, yeah, I'm not too optimistic about Optic's outlook. And yeah, worst team.
I can't believe that he got it in both of the tiebreaker
Yeah,
games.
that was kind of, I mean, like, again, and he played it really well, and props to Optic for that, but, like, holy shit, it's kind of one of those things where, because, I mean, if we can see it, if we're sitting here last week talking about how good Dokla is.
Remember, I said give Dokla fucking Aatrox?
Right, like, if we could see that from here, then how are they not seeing it and just being like, oh yeah, Dokla on Aatrox is like their only viable top lane strategy. Let's just give it to them both times in the most important games of the year. Like, what? I don't know.
I want to put that face you just did into a GIF. That was amazing. That was awesome. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I guess since we're on Optic, we could probably talk about their matchup with CLG overall. Like, so we can go to CLG next and then talk about the matchup. But one thing I would like to mention is I really think if Crown and Meteos don't pop off like for playoffs whatsoever, this as weird as it sounds, I think this is a team that could win NA. Now this is like a 0.00001% chance, right? This is like 1 in 100,000 chance, right? But let me explain the 1 in 100,000 chance. Every time Meteos and Crown has popped off, Optics looked awesome. Think about the game where they pretty much beat Team Liquid without Impact going off on Aatrox. They pretty much had that game won.
Aatrox again. Fuck that champion.
But they pretty much they pretty much had that game won till Impact was like, nah, I'm gonna 1v9 this game and carry Team Liquid, right? Yeah. And Optic has looked that way against top tier teams. They looked that way against CLG. They looked that way against Cloud9. This is a team that can win. They can beat the top tier teams. But that's when Meteos and Crown pop off. So if they popped off and went full Super Saiyan mode and never stopped, this team wins finals easily. I don't trust Meteos and Crown to be Super Saiyan for 9 games in a row. I think is what they'd have to do at minimum. So yeah, frankly, I love Meteos. I love Crown. I think it's very unfortunate that they are on a team where they both are shackled by their teammates, unfortunately. I mean, they're not going to say that, and they probably don't view it that way because it's their teammates, but I'm just going to be the stupid analyst who has no idea what he's talking about and I'm going to say that Meteos and Crown are shackled by Dokla, Arrow, and Big, and that's just the way it looks, and that's how I see it. Most of the plays made by bot lane or top lane are with the help of Meteos or Crown. So I think it's unfortunate that those two great players don't get much of a shot, but hey, I guess you never know. But when we look at a team like CLG, and I'm going to segue into CLG, you got Ruin, who's been the most diverse top laner in NA. You've got Biofrost,
best pickup for sure.
You've got Biofrost and Stixday, who have been the second best bot lane in NA, I think, in my opinion. Sneaky and Zazal being pretty close, but I think they are the best second second best bot lane in NA. Power of Evil is Power of Evil. I mean, he's just gonna do what he's gonna do. And Wiggly has been an all-star for the CLG roster. Man, nobody expected this improvement. Not even Stixay in like the most recent interview, because they asked, "What do you think of Wiggly's improvement?" And he's like, "Honestly, I didn't even expect Wiggly to be this good going into the split." Like when your own teammate says, "Honestly, I didn't expect you to be this good, dude," that says a lot about like where he was at and where they expected him to grow in stages, and maybe what they expected. Maybe they were hoping for a fifth or sixth, spot for playoffs, and then to make a run kind of thing, but here they are in like fucking third place. Like that's pretty fantastic. And knowing full well they have the ability to beat Optic. Yeah, it's just like when you look at CLG, overwhelmingly, they are just there's no reason for them to lose, in my opinion. I mean, sure, Medias can pop off, but he's against Wiggly. Sure, Crown could pop off, but Power of Evil handles himself pretty well. And I anticipate not necessarily Stixay and Biofrost to smash their lane, because that's not something they do, but I anticipate Biofrost to make plays and Stixay to capitalize on them, for Stixay to be ahead, win his lane, and for Ruin to handle what he's going to handle. Sometimes Ruin carries games, sometimes he doesn't. It really depends on what the team comp asks him to do, but Ruin does whatever the team comp usually asks him to do. So, yeah, CLG's I'm going to say it again, they are the most balanced team in NA, in my opinion. They just are a well-oiled machine that may not have the ceilings of Cloud9 or Team Liquid at times, but like I think their overall average is like the best of every team in NA. So yeah, I don't see a reason to think that like CLG can lose, at least against Optic. So, and if, like I said, if I go into the matchup, and I kind of already did the matchups, there's really nothing that favors Optic, and I'm taking CLG 3-0 for this matchup.
Ooh, are we making picks? Should I write this down?
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, might as well.
All right. Do you want to go ahead and throw out what you've got, Tanner?
Sure. So I can't agree more about CLG this season. What a surprise! They've been absolutely phenomenal phenomenal in most of their games, and again, that's off the back of star pickups and amazing like surprise players. Yeah, and again, Power Evil, Stixay, Biofrost, these guys have always been like excellent players for any team that they've been on. So obviously, I think most of the credit does go to Ruin and Wiggly. Just the fact of how good they've been in their first season here in the LCS is just kind of stunning, to say the least. So, I mean, again, every lane for CLG beats the Optic lane except for jungle and mid, in my opinion, like I said earlier, and it's just such a hard ask to say, oh, okay, these two players from Optic are going to somehow turn the tides overwhelmingly against just a consistently good CLG squad that catches teams like C9 and TL sleeping. If CLG is that good and can take it to those kinds of teams, I just don't have any doubt in my mind that Optic is going to lose. So I'm going to give this CLG 3-0 as well. And yeah, because it just seems like an overwhelming matchup.
Yeah, so I agree with CLG. I'm also, I guess, real quick going to take the opportunity to point out that I was the only one who had Optic in the playoffs with our preseason predictions.
That's fair.
So, I got to brag a little bit here. But yeah, we all had CLG out of the playoffs, if we remember correctly.
I think I had him 9th place.
I think I had him 9th.
Yeah, I was not hopeful for sure.
That just tells you the surprise that CLG is this split. You guys have covered the matchups. I agree. I think that Optic has proven top lane wise that if you take Dokla or if you take Aatrox away from Dokla
or Poppy,
and I will continue to say that if CLG gives Aatrox to Dokla in any of these games, I think that they win that game. I think Optic wins that game. But yeah, overall, CLG is better pretty much across the board. The only place that I would argue is, even though Wiggly has come out and had an amazing split and been probably most improved, if you like wanted to hand out that award to somebody, I think he definitely deserves it. I still think Meteos is a little bit better than than Wiggly has been. He's just really been that impressive this split to me. And for my pick, I'm also picking CLG, but I'm gonna go 3-1, and it's because I do believe that Meteos and Crown can carry one game. Like, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Sanders, that it'll take a special performance by those two. I think that Dokla also has been much improved, and even when he's not on Aatrox, I still think that he has moments. But I see a pop-off game between Meteos and Crown, and then just a good game by Dokla being enough to take a game off of CLG, and that's why I'm going to give them a win.
Sounds good to me. All right, so two teams we haven't talked about yet, TSM and CLG. Let's go to Clutch Gaming first, because holy shit. They were the least likely team to make playoffs, and they got 5th seed. Not just snuck in at 6th. They secured 5th seed and didn't have to play a tiebreaker. Holy fucking shit. I can't get over it. They beat 100 Thieves and they beat Guardians. Like, they did what they had to do, right?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Good for them. Like, their week was probably the most important week.
Sorry, no, they didn't beat 100 Thieves for it. They beat
No, they did.
Guardians and
100 Thieves.
Was that the first week?
Yep. Well, week 9, day 1, 100 Thieves, and then day 2, Golden Guardians.
Okay. So I was right the first time. Okay, continue.
But yeah, like, the fact that they were playing the two teams that they were directly competing against for playoff spot, and that they were able to come out and win both of them, that is extremely impressive.
Not to be punny, but it was clutch, right? Yes. That's a very in all seriousness, like, that is a very clutch thing to do. That is like what a team with grit and a clutch team does. Is yes. Like, you do what you're supposed to do when it matters.
Yes. So
you can continue.
Well, so I guess clutch in the last 3 games, 3-0. Granted, it's all against non-playoff teams. TSM, we've been talking about it for weeks now. They don't look very good. They continue to not look great. They were able to win the game against FlyQuest, so they essentially locked their playoff spot right there, and I guess yay, as a TSM fan, they made it in, because it was not 100% that they were going to if they went 0-2, but they were able to beat FlyQuest, and I thought that I didn't think FlyQuest gave them too much trouble, in my opinion. However, it's very embarrassing then to turn around and lose to Team Liquid, even though they're the best team in the league, when Team Liquid comes out and
they played a TFT comp.
Yeah, they played an all glacial.
It wasn't just like G2 picking Garen. It was they decided, hey, let's play a TFT comp. The most meme shit you could do.
Yes. Now, I will say that about 3 picks in, after the second ban phase, I feel like TSM kind of felt the troll happening, and they picked Zed, I think, as a counter meme pick. I do not think that was a legitimate pick.
The only problem with that is that it could have tied for a seed if they would have won the game, and they decided not to do that.
Right. Well, if that's the case, that's really dumb on their part, if they were in fact trolling. But I really do believe that they were, because Zed was an absolute horrific pick into the glacial comp that was being built against them, and I think Bjergsen's kind of been known for his Zed play in the past, and so I think that it was just kind of their counter meme pick. But needless to say, they lost the game, and it wasn't really close. Like, I think it was a sub 30-minute game, or right around a 30-minute game, which is not what you want to see when you're playing a team who is, like, after the game when Doublelift was being interviewed, he was like, I really didn't think that we were going to win this game. We were memeing really hard. And the fact that it was
just what you want to hear.
Yeah, as a TSM fan, that is definitely not what you want to hear when it's a sub 30-minute game and you get your ass kicked. So
yeah, so I want to talk about Clutch a little bit more before I get into TSM. Just talk specifically about their players. I think Lyra is a big weakness. I really think that like they just need a jungle change. Hooney hasn't been like the Hooney of old, but he is certainly like
not the Hooney of recent either.
No, he hasn't been feeding is what you should say. He's been doing okay, right? And I think Hooney has made plays when he's needed to, which is what you need standardly out of your top laner. Demonte's been pretty good. We've talked about Demonte many times. I know Tanner here loves Demonte.
It's Tanner time, baby.
I think all of us like Demonte.
And going off of the 100 Thieves thing, another 100 Thieves reject, Cody's son, is doing very well, actually. When you look at his statistics, he's a top 580 carry. And when you watch him, he's just quietly doing well. No one's really talking about him. No one's like negative against him, and no one's positive against him. He's just quietly doing well. And Vulcan is just assisting him in quietly doing well, right? I think this Clutch Gaming bot lane is actually something to watch out for because, well, like I said, they've been performing well. It's been a vast upgrade, kind of like what I think Tanner said at the very beginning of the split, was that Cody's son could be an upgrade. And I think, Selceus, you had agreed with him on that as well. And I was like, I don't know about that. But you guys were right on that one. I've enjoyed watching Cody's son, actually. I think he's a lot of fun to watch. And he's very, like, cautious in what he does. But, like, when he knows to make a play, he does it. The cautiousness leads to, some conservative play, which leads to non-explosive play, which means better bot laners like Doublelift can take advantage of that. But, like, I think that's nitpicking, right? You have your style, you play it. And I think Cody Stone's been doing pretty well. Overall, like, I think you can be optimistic about Clutch Gaming because they have a style that is their own that no one else in this league is playing. And they had a 9-9 record with it. Like, can we be mad at them for going 500?
No, not at all. I mean,
I don't think we can.
Yeah, no, I was really impressed with this team, especially in the latter half of the season. Something I wanted to point out from this past weekend, especially since we're talking about Cody's son, is Cody's son went 10-0 overall the entirety of the weekend, which is insanely impressive. I mean, these were
I think
games...
it extends beyond.
It probably does.
He's on a 3-game streak of being deathless.
Really? Wow, that's just even more impressive then. Yeah, because I mean, these games mattered obviously a lot. Like, these are the big time games that get them into the playoffs.
They could not lose a game. They were done if they lost a game.
Right, and it seems like Cody's son really did step it up. It was incredibly impressive to see from him. I like what you said earlier about Hooney. He definitely looks a lot better, even when he gets Rumble. It seems like he's absolutely great. I mean, that's his go-to pick, obviously. But then, earlier in the weekend when he was put on Akali, and he actually looked really competent and really, like fluid with his Akali play. Even though he didn't carry that game, he still was definitely a force the whole time. That was really impressive to see as well. It's so weird because this Clutch team almost feels like the antithesis of like an XL for me, because earlier in the season they showed promise and they just never were able to capitalize. And I know I said with XL, it's just like, they just gotta figure out how to capitalize on that, and they never were able to. But CG went the other way. They actually were able to say, okay, hey, this is what we need to be doing. Obviously, Hooney needs to stop doing X, Y, and Z. We need to get more production out of these players. Let's replace this one guy and end up, just catapulting the team into the playoffs. I really like their look for this coming series, and I'm glad they made it. I know they're the lowest chance, but I think they're the most deserving out of the 4 teams that were kind of up for those spots. I think they're definitely the most deserving out of them to make it in.
For sure. And I guess just to add to the Cody Sun point, like, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, I said that we could look back and see the Cody Sun pickup as like the most important pickup for any team. That was before you reminded me of Ruin for CLG, and I still agree that Ruin would definitely be the better pick for, best pickup, but Cody Sun is a close second. Like, this team, I think, was able to have the success that they were because they improved their bot lane. DeMonte has been a good player since he came into the league, and I think that he has shined even more so here in the last few weeks. Again, it's the picks that he's playing. It's something I wish TSM would do. I wish that they would put Bjergsen on those carry champions because he's proven. Hell, he did it last split where he was like, I'm gonna win my 100th game or whatever it was at the time, and he came out 1v9 in a very important matchup. I think it was against C9 in the playoffs, if I remember correctly. But anyway, DeMonte's been playing really well, and then I think we all kind of hit on Huni just perfectly. Like, he is not the carry that he once was, but he also is not the guy that was a detriment to his team last split. And he's been playing much better, especially on Rumble. That's a super comfort pick for him. So if they can continue playing this way, I think that this team has a good future ahead of them. Hopefully not too good in the recent future, but but next split. Next split, maybe.
You mean near future?
That's what I said.
You said recent future.
Oh, sorry. Near future.
Anyway, all right, let's talk about TSM.
No, let's not.
I'm not going to hold back on this one. But first, before I hold back, let's drop some bomb news. Did you hear the bomb news for TSM this morning?
That they're keeping the jungler?
Yeah. Well, no, here's what I think is more shocking. So Spica is going to start playoffs. The guy who started against FlyQuest and Team Liquid. I think here's what's more shocking. The subs they're bringing in for playoffs are tactical and treats. There's support academy and their AD carry academy. So they're not bringing in Greg or Acadian. In other words, like, something they tried an entire split to figure out on who they wanted to be the jungler.
Yeah, welcome to TSM.
Is not relevant whatsoever, which is a far cry from like what this organization used to be. This used to be an organization that was not like in such flummox. Even when they were like 6th place, like, going into playoffs, like, they still like were a team where you were like, yeah, I think this team can do it. And then they made finals, and then they won finals, right? This is a team I don't know if they can make it past quarterfinals, to be quite honest with you. And I think Reggie thinks that because Reggie has stepped in again. It's kind of a meme at this point, but TSM always improves when Reggie steps in. But like, the thing is that I think TSM said, we will not win if Acadian plays. That's what they told themselves. We will not win if Greg plays. So we're putting in Spica this week. If you are like so bad at that point that you think you're going to lose, I think that's the correct move to make. But it's also very worrisome because it's like Spica has no experience. And the funny part is the reason why they're bringing in the tactical and treats is, let's say you think Sven's been a problem, right? Or you think Smoothie's been a problem. Now, here's the thing is, like, Sven, I think naturally the AD carry is going to be the one you pick apart more in a bot lane because they're the carry and they make the plays, right? But it's quite possible, if I went back through the games and really looked at TSM, and their support, it's possible Smoothie's a problem too. But like, if they decide Smoothie's a problem or Sven is a problem, they have to sub out both, because Treats, the support, is a import. So you have to take out Sven if you put in treats, which is why you have to put in tactical. Now, if you wanted to put in tactical instead of smoothie, you could, but that seems really off. I feel like if you're going to put in tactical, you might as well put in treats. So I think that's kind of the funny part for this. There's not much for me to say positively about TSM. I like Broken Blade, and I think Bjergsen's had his worst 2 weekends ever in LCS the last 2 weeks. He's not performed well.
Yeah.
He's been fine, but fine is not good for Bjergsen. That's terrible for Bjergsen.
In
right?
my opinion, he looks like Froggen.
Like Bjergsen has looked so far below the expectation or even just his normal average self. I don't think it's ridiculous to say Bjergsen has had his worst weekends ever. Does that mean he is the worst? Not at all. That's how good Bjergsen is. But his personal career worst is not something you want going into playoffs. Like, there's just nothing I have to say that's optimistic about this TSM team. I'm tired of thinking, oh, Sven and Smoothie can finally pull it off because they haven't been. I'm tired of thinking Bjergsen can finally do it because he hasn't been. He's actually been declining. And as high as I was on Acadian, he's not there. And I'm really tired of thinking they can fix their top lane jungle scenario. They haven't. This is a team that I have as the second worst team in playoffs, and I don't think they're going to beat Clutch. And my pick is Clutch actually wins this 3-1, shockingly enough. I have that much confidence in Clutch to pull out some games with their unique style, to beat a TSM team that I think is just kind of dead in the water and hoping to experiment at some point, and hoping to experiment and get a run with their experiment. I think this is a very poor way to go into playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree that it's definitely a very poor way to go into playoffs. The fact that you're making a roster change for sure going into playoffs.
And it's not like your win against FlyQuest was amazing either.
With 1 week of experience. Like he's played 1 weekend now and has 2 games under his belt, and you're going to now throw him into playoffs. As I guess the optimist and the TSM fan, I'm gonna cling to the fact that it's moving from a best of 1 to a best of 5, and I do think that TSM has a good coaching staff that can draft well, make good decisions, and adjust to things throughout a series. And on top of that, if they are in trouble, I think that Bjergsen, I agree with you. I think that he's had a really bad split, but I think that's because they haven't put him in like the position to carry enough. And if their back is against the ropes, I fully believe that they are going to put him on a carry and say, please.
Don't you think they would have done that by now?
No, because they're in the playoffs.
No, I meant even before that. Like, so here's my problem with it. We were talking.
I'm saying, like, I wish that they would, but I think that they saw themselves in playoffs, and they also wanted to keep playing this play style, like that they had for some reason decided was the play style they wanted to play. And unfortunately, TSM, as I said earlier, is extremely hard-headed when they make decisions. They're not quick to be like, okay, this isn't working really well. Let's try something else that's might be way better and way more successful.
Here's another thing I have about TSM. This has to do with Bjergsen. I think Bjergsen is easily one of the most likable players and characters in League of Legends esports. Sure. I honestly, looking at how TSM is drafted recently, I honestly think Bjergsen has a voice and says, I'm going to do this to help the team. I think that's wrong, and I think he needs to be selfish, and he needs to say, give me the carry. The kind of like the give me the ball mentality. I will score with it. Like Antonio Brown or something like Antonio Brown knows what he provides to a team, right? He knows, give me the ball, I'm going to score, right? Or like LeBron James, give me the ball, I'm going to score, right? Maybe not so much anymore with LeBron James, but in like his prime. You know what I'm talking about.
I still think last year, even with this like awful, with the Lakers being awful, I still think that like if they, had potential to make playoffs, he would have had that mentality, and it would have worked just as well.
And Bjergsen doesn't have that mentality, and I think it's worked out when you have like this all-star cast around TSM. But I'm kind of sick of Bjergsen just like taking a backseat in like draft, and I kind of wish they would just give Bjergsen the ball, say, "Here you go, 1v9 the game because it's what we need you to do."
Right, and last year in the playoffs they did. And that's I guess what
I don't think it's gonna happen. That's why I'm picking Clutch.
That's what I'm hoping is going to happen. That mixed with coaching, and then like I guess. But if you want me to start going down the laundry list of things that I'm worried about with this team, it's the fact that they have a brand new jungler that I know nothing about, and is potentially not even going to be as good as Acadian. Sven and Smoothie have not looked like top tier bot lane. And to speak to I guess the Sven Smoothie stuff, like Smoothie is actually one of the main reasons why they were able to win against FlyQuest, because of his play in keeping people alive with all the shields and stuff that he provided. I think he had an amazing game, and I think that he's actually been pretty good from my opinion anyway. I think that Sven has never lived up to the expectations that people had of him coming over, and I think part of that has to do with like the meta shift. Like he came over here kind of right when the meta shifted from like a slower play style to a more aggressive play style, and I don't think that he's handled that well, but I also don't think that TSM has handled it well. Like, well, at least in the splits where they haven't done well, right? Like last split when they went on their tear, it's because they actually did adjust and started playing more aggressively. It was one of the best teams in the league for that reason. But the first half of the split, they looked bad. And then this entire split, they've also looked pretty weak because for some reason they went away from that. And they went, I don't know, back to comfort, but comfort in this case is not successful. So I'm definitely worried about a lot of things. I think that Broken Blade hasn't looked like as good as he did in the previous split. Not knowing anything about this jungler, he could come in and like shit the bed really hard in playoffs. Even though after the FlyQuest win, when he was interviewed, he appeared to have all the confidence in the world, and that's good. It's comforting that it doesn't appear the stage is too big for him. And then the bot lane is questionable at best. But with that being said, the stuff I'm hanging my hat on is the stuff that I'm I believe more in than the faults of this team, and clutch being improved still is not quite there for me to where I believe that they're going to dominate TSM. And I'm gonna give it to TSM, but I'm making this a 3-2 series. I think that it's very close. You're muted.
Correct. Every single quarterfinals for TSM is a 3-2, so it's not a bad pick.
That's fair. I can't wrap my head around who I want to win or who I think will win this. I think both of these teams, I think we've covered most of it, and so now it's just down to who wins at the end of the day. I do think this is going to be a 3-2 series. I think these are two really close teams based on their circumstances, on whether that be the unfortunate ones of TSM or the positive ones of Clutch. I think on paper, I would given the teams as they are, it's hard for me to look at Clutch Gaming and think that they won't beat TSM in its current state. Clutch Gaming has looked absolutely dominant the last couple of days. Cody's son, I think, is probably doing well enough by himself to carry Clutch Gaming past TSM. But there's always these things in the back of my head that's kind of nagging, and it's this idea of betting against Bjergsen in the playoffs is not really an easy thing to do this early on. So I think it's a conflicted 3-2 in the way of Clutch Gaming for me. I think that this could go either way. It's going to be really closely contested. And I really do hope that Spica does, have a kind of standout, series and kind of show that he is good. But it's such a hard thing to ask from, a player that's just, hey, guess what? You're being called up. And also, guess what? You're the only jungler now. And also, guess what? We're in playoffs. So have
and
fun.
Also, guess what? You're on TSM, the team that criticizes the jungler the most.
Right. So, like, the burden, I mean, again, hopefully people will be lax to him because it's his first time. But I hope he impresses. I hope he impresses because clearly TSM sees something in him that they're not seeing in Acadian or Grig. Or maybe it's just because they haven't seen anything from him yet, and they've seen what they can see from Acadian and Grig. That could be the other thing. So,
yeah,
it feels so weird, kind of betting against TSM this early in playoffs, and that's just name wise. But I'm sure if I just looked at the statistics without any names, look at the players without any names, and see the KDAs and what's going on with each of these guys, it'd be hard for me to not play Clutch. So I will stand by that.
I'll finish with at least my thoughts with this. If Clutch Gaming comes in and like 3-0s this series,
I doubt that'll happen. But
well, obviously none of us picked that. But it's with as bad as TSM has looked, and with the unknowns that we have going into playoffs, if that happens, like I don't know what to think. I would actually fully expect that this roster gets completely blown up, like 3/5 of it potentially change before the next season.
I could see it. So we got one more thing to talk about. And this is actually what's super important about specifically CLG versus Optic. The Gauntlet. Team Liquid and probably Cloud9 are going to get into Worlds because Team Liquid will probably win finals and Cloud9 will get in off points. And even if Cloud9 won finals, Team Liquid gets in on points. So I think it's guaranteed that like at this point, Team Liquid and Cloud9 are top two. I think that's safe assumption. So for the number 3, talking about the Gauntlet, if CLG loses this, they will not be allowed in the Gauntlet because they didn't make playoffs. Same for Optic. If they don't make this, they won't be allowed in the Gauntlet. Which leads me to my really funny thing here. The one team that is guaranteed to be in Gauntlet right now is FlyQuest because they got 4th place last split. They have 40. They have 40 points. They have the 4th most points right now. So like Optic has 20 right now. If they lose, they finish with 20. Well,
at one point, didn't you have to make playoffs in summer to get into the Gauntlet?
No, you had to have points. It was you had to have points to get enough points to get into the Gauntlet. Okay. So like right now, FlyQuest has 40, right? Clutch has 20, CLG has 20, Optic has 20. Obviously, CLG or Optic is going to move up, right? So what would happen there is because Optic is 6th place, they would be removed even if Clutch Gaming lost, because Clutch Gaming would be giving the favor there. So Clutch Gaming would get in. Now, let's just say Clutch Gaming wins, and obviously TSM gets in because they're at 90 points right now. So, I mean, TSM has the second most points in NA at the moment. So, pretty much Optics in a win or you don't have a chance at Worlds scenario. So that's the desperation that Optic is in. That doesn't change my story at all. I'm pretty sure CLG 3-0s them. But that's the importance of this, is when we look at like whoever loses this weekend, they are going to be the first people to play FlyQuest, which I don't think is like a threat really at this point. But that is like something to actually like look at, is that FlyQuest is not out of the world's picture yet.
Gotcha. Unfortunately, with how they played this split, I think they are out of the world's picture.
Yeah, I would kind of.
At least not mathematically, they're not.
That's true.
That's fair.
That's true.
Which I think is hilarious because they actually talked about how going into this week, all their scrims were focused on the Gauntlet patch and not the Week 17 patch. So I was like, okay, well that's interesting, but that's not an excuse to lose to Echo Fox. Kind of what I
In
had.
a very bad game that like was not troll. Like we wanted it to be a trolly game, and I didn't feel that it was.
Yeah, no.
And then it was just a bad game on top of that. Is
Yeah. So anyways, CLG loses, they're out of Worlds. Optic loses, they're out of Worlds. TSM, Clutch, and CLG are safe. And in the case where Clutch and Optic both lose, like I was saying, Clutch gets the favor because they have the higher seed, the split. So I think that wraps it up for us for now. We'll talk about Team Liquid and Cloud9 next week when they actually play, because they got the buys. I would like to say proud effort by Cloud9 for securing the number 1 seed over CLG, because they had to play a tiebreaker for that. Licorice looked very good against Ruin, looked like his normal self, and definitely actually looked pretty damn good too. I was impressed with
It's amazing what happens when you put Talon in the other lanes.
I know, right? But like definitely I think was like 6-0 at some point. Like he popped off. I was just like, is this the real Definitely? I was like, is this what happens when he has support around him?
Did he play Heimerdinger?
No, he played Ezreal.
I was just kidding.
Yeah, he's not Hjarnan. Yeah. Anyway, so I just wanted to give some props to Cloud9. So
yeah.
Anything else we got?
Nothing
no,
here.
I can't think of anything.
Cool. That wraps it up. We have some exciting playoffs going on this weekend for NA, and don't forget to tune into EU as well, because EU's still going on, and there is a tight race at 5th, 6th, and 7th place for EU.
Yeah, it could get interesting actually real fast in EU. The bottom of the standings could.
Yeah, it could.
For sure.
I really do think Origin's gonna fall out. But then again, I said I really thought that Optic was gonna fall out, and here we are. So thank you, Golden Guardians and 100 Thieves, for royally fucking it up. Anyways, so that wraps it up for us tonight. Like I said, playoffs for NA this weekend, and there's some EU action this weekend. Make sure you catch them both, and we are going to cover them next week. So from Tanner, Blitzerama, Brelje, all the way below me, and then Jamie, Selceus, Christensen above him, but still below me. I am Jacob Sminted Sanders, and you will not see me on the list this week because the new Saviors of Oldham expansion came out. See you later.
Reno Mage.